Let's go. Hello, everybody. Welcome for coming. My name is Jen. I am a library aide and a library student in Syosset, New York. We are here today with the ALA GNCRT to see Brandon Digwood talk about censorship in manga, and we are all so excited. Just to start us off, as I said, this is presented by the ALA Graphic Novel and Comics Roundtable. Please go to our website. We have lots of great resources and we have merch. It's all very beautiful and desirable. So go check that out. Our website is ala.org/GNCRT, and you can check that all out there. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over really briefly to Joe. Hello, Joe.
Hey, what's going on, Jen? Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well tonight. Looking forward to the webinar. Just wanted to give a quick plug to the committee that I co-chair here with the Graphic Novel Comics Roundtable. That is the Best Graphic Novels for Adults Committee. Put it in the chat right there. We always are, look, even if you are not on the committee, and you can see who is on the committee on that page, we do accept nominations from outside of the committee roster. The link right there is, the link to do so is in that link that I put in the chat, lots of links, but not a lot of time to nominate a graphic novel. We are closing down the original, the nomination page on October 25th. So you have a little less than a month. So if you read anything good in 2024 that you feel would be a fit for our list, don't be afraid to nominate it. And keep your eye on the GNCRT forums because we are going to be recruiting for 2025 very soon. That's all I've got to say. I'll just put my email in the chat as well if you guys have any questions about the committee. But I'm going to turn it over now to Brandon, who's got a great webinar plan. So Brandon, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I am Brandon Digwood. I am a librarian in DC, team librarian. Give me just one moment, please, to share my screen, and I will bring up my presentation for the day. As alluded to by my by my friends here, this is going to be about foreign censorship of anime. There is going to be a Q&A here within the chat that you'll be able to ask questions. My my co-presenters will let me know if there's any big questions to go through, but I am going to go through this really quickly due to the time that we have available. Okay, so foreign censorship of anime and manga, current and historical. While I have mentioned I am a librarian here, part of my thing is, of course, I am also a 90s kid and stuff, and that's when the biggest censorship of anime and manga occurred within here within the U.S. and stuff, as stuff started to be imported over from Japan. The big question, of course, is why? Part of it was the American Federal Communications Commission, their standards and practices. They have, of course, as we all know, specific TV settings, ratings, TVY7, TVY14, also TVMA, different. And those basically meant that certain things that were acceptable to Japan's broadcasting standards weren't acceptable by American broadcasting standards. Also, a good watchword: the earlier in the day that a anime was shown on network, the more it was censored. Of course, the original manga was the touchstone and everything, but as it was adapted to anime, changes were made to make it work for a TV format in Japan, and then of course, as it was brought over to America and other foreign countries, that's why it changed. A lot of stuff that was kind of rated for teen and in Japan was actually shown as early morning Saturday cartoon stuff in the 90s and 2000s, which had much stricter standards. Again, like some other anime blocks I mentioned, like Saturday morning cartoon stuff, but there was also anime blocks like Toonami and Cartoon Network. And also on Cartoon Network, there are late night anime and Adult Swim, which is where a lot of stuff is shown practically unedited now, just dubbed. One of the most infamous things mentioned, 4Kids Entertainment, which had the biggest licensing of anime from Japan during the 1990s and up to the early 2000s. And they were kind of the peak of censorship. let's see. And right now, a big way to get anime is through Crunchyroll, other apps, but there's even censoring that takes place on theirs to make them acceptable to our audience versus other audiences. So let's get into some examples. First and foremost, violence. In the original broadcasting of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, any instances of guns were removed, and characters ended up with finger guns, also any kind of blades or traps. And while there was actually a lot of actual death in the original version and stuff, since it was a Saturday morning cartoon, characters, instead of being killed, were sent to the Shadow Realm. One Piece was also an infamous example of censorship. Instead of guns, this lovely little hammer thing you can see one character threatening another with here. Let's see. Body issues were another thing to mention. One of the first shoujo anime broadcasts in the U.S., Sailor Moon. Any examples in the transformation sequences where you could see a line that would denote a character's breasts or other body parts? If they were in a bath, which would be an acceptable thing to show in the original thing and stuff, the water would be turned opaque, blurred out, and other such examples from there. Also happened in public baths and scenes with certain characters who were less than ideal for American broadcasting standards. In Dragon Ball, Pokemon, an infamous episode where a villain in the show named James cross-dressed as a female and had blow-up breasts to enter into a beauty pageant was never aired outside of Japan during the original broadcast. Digimon Cross Wars, characters that had more revealing outfits in Japan, of course, edited out in America, like Lilithmon and here Mervamon. And a more recent example from My Hero Academia, a female character named Momo, who basically superpower is to create from her body different constructs and stuff, everything up to weapons the characters can use to whatever and stuff, has holes in her outfit to let them come out of her body and stuff. And because of the way the said holes were positioned, in the Philippines, that a character is not seen and that anime is not broadcasted in current censorship. Also infamous was cut content. Going back to One Piece, and you're going to hear them a lot in this presentation just because of what 4Kids did. In the original Saturday morning cartoon dub, they cut out an entire arc called Little Garden. To get to, basically with stuff they did so to get to the Drum Island arc that introduced a popular mascot character named Chopper, which was a cute little reindeer. In total, 20 whole episodes worth of 20 whole episodes were cut out, and 39 episodes worth of content total were cut out during the 4Kids run of this series due to repackaging and to make it more Americanized and Westernized. The entire last season of the original run of Sailor Moon was never shown in America because of the three characters that you can see on the far right of this thing. They are transgender characters that were, when not transformed, they were male. When transformed and fighting with the Sailor Scouts, they were female. Card Captors was the first few episodes of the series were never aired in an English dub because the popular male character Lee Sharon was not in them. It basically, the dub of this turned what was a shoujo or which was a young girls anime and manga into a battle shonen anime, basically marketed for young boys. In total, only 38 of the full 70 episodes of the original run were ever aired in America. In Pokemon, everybody might have heard this, the infamous Porygon episode where Pikachu, and it was Pikachu, it wasn't the character Porygon, the Pokemon Porygon, basically hit a lightning bolt, exploding missiles, caused crazy flashing lights, and that caused seizures for kids when that was originally for several hundred kids when it was originally aired in Japan because of how close they were sitting to the TV. There is also an episode where suddenly Ash didn't have any Tauros, and suddenly he has 30 Tauros. The episode where he catches all of those Tauros in an area called the Safari Zone was never shown, basically because there was the use of guns within that episode, throughout that episode, from a big game hunter. And there's another episode called Legend of the Dratini where one of the villains used a bazooka, and that was not shown. One last thing to mention is that when a lot of this stuff was westernized and brought over, opening and closing credits were usually cut from the broadcast in order to make commercials, in order to make more room for commercials. But in other areas, in Japan originally, they were like they're basically vehicles for the pop idols, the singers who are associated with the companies that make these anime and manga, in order to that was kind of their vehicle for promotion and everything. And so not here in America. Okay. Some famous examples of repackaged shows that I just want to talk about. Robotech is an American series, but it was originally a blending of 3 different Macross shows that were blended all together into one, resulting in characters from different shows being portrayed in Robotech as the same characters, despite the obvious physical differences that were shown. In another series called Battle of the Planets, this was they added in a special robot helper character animated in a completely different style than the original Science Team Ninja Gotchaman anime that footage from this was pulled from. This character, called Seven Zark 7, basically narrated over what they couldn't show due to content standards for their time slot. There were no deaths in Battle of the Planets that were actually in Science Team Ninja Gotchaman, and instead of gunshots from the original, there were stun blasts. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Studio Ghibli and the famous anime movies from Hayao Miyazaki. Actually, a precursor to Studio Ghibli before it was founded, but one of that's called kind of Studio Ghibli in hindsight and everything, is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. But much like Card Captors, when this was brought over originally, it was turned into an action movie called Warriors of the Wind, with 24 minutes cut out of it total. Nausicaa, the main protagonist, was barely shown, and the whole environmental message of the series was lost. When the time came later, when Studio Ghibli became more popular, and when the studio Miramax wanted to adapt another Studio Ghibli title, Princess Mononoke, Studio Ghibli, maybe Hayao Miyazaki himself, sent the executives over at Miramax, specifically Harvey Weinstein, a katana with a message on it with 2 words: "No cuts." So because of that, some changes were made to the movie to make it a bit more understandable for Western audiences, but the story itself was largely left intact. Okay, some cultural sensitivity. Some stuff that's acceptable in Japan, but wouldn't fly in Western countries. In the original Digimon Adventure from 1999, the main group of kids, gets basically stranded in Tokyo and has to hitchhike to their home. One of the young guys gets solicited by an older female, and the gang eventually gets picked up by what's called one of the female characters, Sora, her cousin. Not really her cousin. In One Piece, especially the 4Kids dub, Sanji, one of the main characters, is always smoking a cigarette in the original, but in the 4Kids dub, that was changed to a lollipop. Smoking at the time in Japan was an example of a character being older and hipper and cool, but not acceptable, of course, for American audiences. Let's see. And likewise, a character named Smoker, who's literally made of smoke and always smoking cigars from the Marines, one of the villains of the show, basically just had the smoke emanating from him the entire time. in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, and also in Yu-Gi-Oh! Special like pentagrams and other strange symbols were basically edited out. In Dragon Ball Z, character called Mr. Popo and other characters of African descent were basically created as characters in the original run and looked like the stereotypical blackface portrayal. In the original dubs, Mr. Popo was overlaid with a blue tinge, and eventually changed back subtly over time to make him more acceptable. Also, at one point, the characters and one of the main character, after dying, ends up in the actual version of hell in this particular thing, and that's shown on the T-shirts of the demons who live there. But because that wouldn't be acceptable for American broadcast audiences, it was changed to HFIL on their shirts and everything, and called the Home for Infinite Losers. One of the most recent examples of overlays and changes, Digimon Data Squad. And this character you see over on the left is on the top is actually called Nano Bomberman, Bomber Nanomon. But he's changed to Citramon and recolored orange to show so that he's not actually a giant bomb attacking an amusement park, which would of course be an issue for American audiences. Cultural changes. A lot of times, especially in earlier dubs, Japanese text and money is changed in the background to Western equivalents. Nowadays, in a lot of things, you'll just see subtitles showing what the actual kanji katakana are. One of the most infamous examples of cultural changes occurred in early Pokemon dubs. According to the character Brock in the original dub, these onigiri rice balls that you can see he has are actually jelly-filled donuts. And there were actually overlays of some food like sandwiches over these things in other early Pokemon episodes. Also, right around the time of the 9/11 terrorist attacks was when it was shown Tentacruel, Pokemon growing large and destroying a whole city. And of course, that was not shown due to the cultural issues at the time. In Digimon Adventure, and the original Digimon Adventure dub, Buddhism and other religious contexts were changed in different things. Also, a character's drinking and getting drunk on alcohol, it's changed to them just loving soda for various reasons, because of course they have to be kind of alcoholism can't really be shown. LGBTQ issues to mention. Sailor Moon. I've already mentioned a little bit about the Sailor Starks and the transgender, but far more infamous from Sailor Moon was the Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus. Instead of being lovers as they were in the original thing, they were really cousins, really close cousins. And a lot of characters, their gender was changed, especially in the show from sub to dumb, so they would appear either more masculine or feminine, regardless of their original gender. All of the original villains in the first season were male, and two males were in love with each other, but the one long-haired, red-haired person was changed and appeared to be female. Let's see. An infamous series that was changed for a lot of content that LGBTQ content was removed from was the Card Captors series. Let's see. This character, Madison in the dub, Tomoyo, Sakura's best friend, actually has feelings for Sakura, the main character of the series. There's also the character you see in the left there, Yukido, actually is a magical construct spirit. But everybody in the dub is in love with him. The main character, Sakura, is in love with him. The main male character, Lee's in love with him, although that's explained as just his magic power. And Sakura's brother, the guy on the right, is in love with him. And a lot of that, Sakura's brother ends up good friendship, but a little bit of it still came through. Digimon, the characters are famously neither male nor female. So this character, Crusadermon, in one series is depicted as male, and another series is depicted as female, and goes back and forth. One more recent example to mention, one last recent example to mention is Crunchyroll, the biggest streaming app currently in the area. In July of this year, due to hate bashing of LGBTQ shows, Crunchyroll ended up removing their entire comments section that they had. Like every episode had that was aired, people had content, spoilers, connections they made over the comment section down below. Most episodes as they aired, because of basically bashing by people of LGBTQ shows on the app, they were basically removed from that. And I know I ran through this pretty fast, but that is pretty much the information. That's pretty much the big things I have. I want to just mention credit, especially to from Victoria Rabar, who helped me get this, who helped me with basically her article from the Office of Intellectual Freedom blog, Viewing Anime Censorship at Your Library, helped me give a lot of direction to update and get this presentation as good as it is. Thank you very much for that. I am going to stop sharing my screen at this point, and we can turn it over from here for any questions or any more information from here.
Okay. How do I get my video back on here? Well, while I try to, here we go. Thank you so much, Brandon. That was so interesting. We do have a little bit of time for questions. Feel free to submit them via Q&A.
I should mention the original manga is always the most pure intent of the author's work. I know I focused a lot on anime, if not exclusively, because that's the biggest adaptation you see of them and stuff. But the originals in your library are usually the best to see the most original content.
Nice. Okay, any questions? Okay, oh, here we go. Okay, we have a question from Linda. Do you know about Diesel, the unofficial American remake of JoJo?
I have to admit, I am not a huge JoJo fan. I have tried part one and I did not get really into it. I know it gets better at part three. I am going to watch it eventually. But no, Diesel has escaped me up until this point, so I am not aware of it. Sorry.
Okay, we also have a question from Adara. Where can we send patrons to see the original anime? I understand the manga is cataloged.
I would mention, for the most part, to see broadcast, Crunchyroll is probably the biggest one that has anime now and stuff. Everything I mentioned that was like 90s dubbed and sometimes butchered and stuff is almost always available on Crunchyroll. Another popular one that I know of is High Dive. I should mention Crunchyroll does have, if you look up public viewing with them, you can use them and show stuff from them as part of a library's anime manga club completely legally. Mentioned High Dive is the other big one I know of. I know there's other apps out there that are legal. As for the less than legal stuff, I don't think I can mention that in the AI webinar.
Sounds at cross purposes with our with our jobs. But thank you. Cassandra asks, have any of the publishers ever gone back and re-released the anime or manga without the edits?
Actually, yes, in some ways. I know a lot of us see the original. Let me preface. I know a lot of us have. If we take up any of the manga titles in our libraries and stuff, and we look at where we would normally open a book that's a Western format, you'll see on the back, hey, this is the wrong way to read. Go to read left to right and stuff. I do know I have had for the past few years the original Inuyasha, shoujo girls manga, and originally formatted and released in a Western format and stuff. So of course all the artwork was flipped, all completely different and stuff. Up until a few years ago, I had those till I finally redid them for my library and stuff, and they've been reissued, of course, in the new format and everything. Every time that a bunch of chapters is put together and released in the tankobon little manga book formats that we have, either in Japan or in America. They are changed around a little bit and stuff. Original authors changed around just a little bit, especially if they have any corrections to make and stuff that they weren't able to when they published them in the print magazines in America and back in Japan originally. The basically apps like Shueisha's website and stuff is the best way to see the most original version of the content and see it in the most unaltered form and stuff. And probably catch out some mistakes and brag about that in forums.
Okay. Charlie asks, are you aware of any notable or recent instances of manga series being challenged or banned in libraries? I have recently read about LGBTQ plus series such as Sasaki and Miyano being challenged, and I was wondering if there were any other titles that have been challenged or banned as well.
I have to defer to ALA on this part and stuff because that's not something I'm keeping up with directly myself and stuff. The OIF would probably know more than I would.
Interesting. Okay. Something to look into. Lauren asks, do you ever
Just mentioning we got posted from Comics Beat and stuff in the chat. Foremost banned manga in America in 2023. Just wanted to make sure that people are aware of that.
Nice, excellent. Yeah, there's some really great resources from Shira in the comments. Thank you. Okay, Lauren asks, do you ever find that if something is made as an anime first, does it tend to be more explicit when turned into manga? Also, do you find that light novels tend to take more liberties with things because they are text and not visual?
To answer the second part of that question first, I would definitely say yes. We've got a few light novels here in my library. I know Sword Art Online is probably the most infamous for content that if it was like being shown on a 90s Saturday morning cartoon dub, so much of it would be changed because it's really squidgy now when you get right down to it and some of the stuff and everything. Although I don't know why I love Kirita's battle scenes. I am a horrible person for that. So that's so to answer the second part of the question, I definitely think light novels can take more liberties, but also at the same time, I do have to mention I think they're a great resource and stuff because things like, especially if it's also manga anime adaptations, if the property is being used in several things. My Hero Academia is a good one to mention for that and stuff because it's in like all the formats. What was the first part of the question again, Jen?
The first part was, do you ever find that if something is made as an anime first, does it tend to be more explicit when turned into a manga?
I have to be honest, I'm not familiar enough with both mediums to know for sure. Can't think of an example off the top of my head and everything where that would work being more explicit. So I can't say.
All right. Do you have time for one more, or we
Of course, yeah.
Okay, great. Jessica asks, when it comes to LGBTQ characters in anime and manga, is Japan generally more accepting? Or is it just a cultural difference in how relationships are seen through the genders? I know it's clear that Uranus and Neptune are a romantic couple in the subtext, for instance, in Sailor Moon, but I believe Naoko Takeuchi left it slightly ambiguous.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, yes, definitely slightly ambiguous. In my research that I've seen around, because I have read a decent amount of stuff, I do think that there's examples that vary across the spectrum of good representation, bad representation in manga, verse, and also just like there is in Western media as well. I know a popular little comedy series we have here on my shelves is I Think Our Son is Gay, told from the perspective of a mother who is not 100% sure her son is on the spectrum, but thinks that. Uh, uh, Famous historical example I would say would definitely be Orin High School Host Club being a good example of characters from good from bad, like all across the spectrum in different ways and stuff. With the main character's father actually being a drag queen, and just other examples here and there. Yeah, I think it can really vary. One Piece is, of course, as you can see from all the examples, there I'm ride or die, even though I shouldn't be. Uh, One Piece has an extremely great character, Emporio Ivankov, uh, uh, a great Okama. Also, Mr. Two Bomb Clay starts as a villain, becomes a great support to Luffy and his friends, and is a great Okama as well. Uh, it is just, and those are some good examples, and there's also some very bad examples in that series as well.
Thank you. Okay, there's one more. This is perhaps a request for maybe like a little recap, TLDR. I came into the webinar a little late. I was told about this webinar from my professor and just wanted to get an idea of what the webinar was about and some of the things discussed. We were discussing book challenges, bans, and censorship in my college course, so I'd love to get your input. Do you want to give us a little like in conclusion of your talk and yeah, wrap it all up for Jeremiah?
Of course, the basics were. I'm a big '90s kid and stuff. So I've done research and shown a lot of manga and anime when they were first being imported from Japan over here. There was a lot of censorship to make them more westernized and acceptable to Western audiences. Went through some of the examples of that going up through even some examples that occurred I mean, as late as this year, and you'll be able to view the entire webinar the entire webinar recording and stuff from ALA and stuff, and see everything that we discussed about.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for shouting out the resources and where this will all be. If we don't have any more questions, we can wrap this up. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you, Brandon, for the fascinating talk. I really enjoyed it. Just to recap from the beginning, this has been a presentation of the ALA GNCRT. Please go to our website to find out more about our great resources and that awesome merch that I was talking about earlier. You want to check that out. All right, and please head to ala.org/GNCRT to find out more. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you so much and have a lovely evening. All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.